In the annals of martial history, few figures loom as large or as intimidating as Miyamoto Musashi. Born in 1584 in feudal Japan, Musashi became the most feared swordsman of his era, reportedly undefeated in over 60 duels, many of which were fights to the death. But what made Musashi truly terrifying wasn't just his skill with the blade. It was the absolute mastery he achieved over both mind and body, a level of integration so complete that it transcended the physical realm and entered something approaching the supernatural. The concept of mental and physical strength that Musashi embodied wasn't about brute force or mere technical proficiency. It was about achieving a state of being where thought and action became one, where the mind controlled the body with such precision that hesitation ceased to exist, and where discipline became not a burden but the very essence of freedom. This is the scary truth about Musashi's strength. It came from a place most people fear to explore, the complete subjugation of the self to a higher purpose, the absolute dedication to mastery regardless of cost. To understand the true nature of Musashi's terrifying mastery, we must examine not just what he achieved but how he achieved it, and more importantly, what it cost him. His life serves as both inspiration and warning, a testament to human potential and a stark reminder that greatness demands sacrifice that most are unwilling to make. In exploring his path, we discover uncomfortable truths about excellence, dedication, and the price of becoming extraordinary. The foundation: understanding true strength. Musashi's understanding of strength differed fundamentally from how most people conceptualize it. In his seminal work, The Book of Five Rings, Go-Rin no Sho, written near the end of his life while living in a cave, Musashi articulated a philosophy that elevated strength beyond physical prowess into a holistic system of being. For Musashi, true strength emerged from the harmony of multiple elements: physical conditioning, mental discipline, strategic thinking, spiritual cultivation, and intuitive understanding. He believed that mastery in one area while neglecting others created vulnerabilities that a skilled opponent could exploit. This holistic approach was revolutionary for its time and remains relevant today. Where other martial artists might focus solely on technique or solely on strength, Musashi insisted that all dimensions must be developed in concert. What made this scary was the level of commitment required. Musashi lived as a ronin, a masterless samurai, deliberately rejecting the comfort of a lord's patronage. He owned almost nothing, slept rough, rarely bathed, and devoted himself entirely to the way of the sword. His life was his practice. There was no separation between who he was and what he did. This total integration of identity and purpose is what most people find terrifying. The idea that to achieve true mastery, you might have to sacrifice everything else. He understood that strength wasn't merely the absence of weakness but the presence of capability across all domains. A strong sword arm meant nothing if the mind panicked under pressure. Mental fortitude was useless if the body couldn't execute. Strategic brilliance failed without the intuition to adapt in real time. Musashi didn't just train these qualities separately. He forged them into an inseparable whole, each reinforcing and elevating the others. This synergistic approach to mastery is what separated him from skilled practitioners and elevated him to the realm of legend. Mental discipline. The mind like still water. The cornerstone of Musashi's terrifying effectiveness was his mental discipline. He developed what he called Haijishin, the mind of everyday life, or ordinary mind. This wasn't about achieving some mystical state of consciousness. Rather, it was about maintaining the same calm, clear-headed awareness in the midst of mortal combat as one would have sitting peacefully at home. Imagine standing face to face with an opponent who wants to kill you, both hands gripping a razor-sharp blade, knowing that a single mistake means death, and maintaining the exact same mental state as if you were taking a casual walk. This is the level of mental control Musashi achieved. He trained his mind to observe without judgment, to react without emotion, to decide without hesitation. The slightest ripple of fear, the briefest moment of doubt, could mean the difference between life and death. His methods for developing this mental discipline were austere to the point of being brutal. He practiced meditation for hours, often in caves or on mountaintops. He deliberately put himself in uncomfortable and dangerous situations to train his mind to remain calm. He studied constantly, not just martial arts but strategy, philosophy, poetry, calligraphy, and painting. He believed that perceiving one thing meant perceiving all things, and that the principles that govern swordsmanship also governed life. Musashi understood that the mind was the first battlefield. Opponents could be defeated psychologically before swords ever crossed. His famous tactic of arriving late to duels wasn't disrespect, it was psychological warfare. By disrupting his opponent's mental preparation, by forcing them to wait and stew in anticipation, he gained an advantage before the fight began. He studied not just how to fight, but how to think about fighting, how to control his own mental state and manipulate his opponents. The scary part of this mental discipline was its totality. Musashi didn't allow himself moments of weakness or indulgence. He trained his mind to be constantly vigilant, constantly aware, constantly processing. He wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain." But he also understood that whatever path you chose, it required unwavering focus. His mind was a weapon as sharp as his sword, honed through decades of relentless discipline. To achieve this level of mental control required not just practice but a fundamental restructuring of consciousness, a rewiring of instinctive responses that most people never attempt. Physical mastery. The body as instrument. While Musashi's mental discipline was formidable, his physical mastery was equally terrifying. He didn't just train his body, he refined it into a perfect instrument of his will. Every movement was deliberate, every technique practiced 10,000 times until it became not just second nature but first nature, executing without conscious thought.
Musashi pioneered the two-sword style, Nitten Ichi-ryu, the school of the strategy of two heavens as one, wielding both a katana and a wakizashi simultaneously. This was considered nearly impossible by his contemporaries. The level of ambidexterity, coordination, and physical conditioning required was extraordinary. He had to train both hands to equal strength and skill, something that went against the natural dominance most people have. This wasn't just about being able to use both hands, it was about developing such complete body awareness that each limb could execute complex techniques independently while coordinating with the other. His training regimen was relentless. Historical accounts suggest he would practice sword strikes thousands of times daily. He would train in all conditions: rain, snow, darkness, extreme heat. He deliberately practiced when tired, when injured, when distracted. He wanted to ensure that his body would respond correctly regardless of circumstances. This wasn't mindless repetition, but conscious, deliberate practice where each movement was examined, refined, and perfected. He understood the difference between mere practice and perfect practice. What made Musashi's physical strength scary wasn't just his skill, but his endurance and pain tolerance. He could fight for extended periods without tiring. He could sustain injuries that would incapacitate others and continue fighting. His body had been conditioned through years of hardship to function at peak performance under the most adverse conditions. He lived rough, slept on hard ground, endured harsh weather, and embraced discomfort as a training tool. Where others sought comfort, Musashi sought challenge, knowing that the body adapts to the demands placed upon it. He wrote, "The true science of martial arts means practicing them in such a way that they will be useful at any time, and to teach them in such a way that they will be useful in all things. This philosophy extended to his physical training. He didn't just practice perfect technique under ideal conditions. He deliberately trained under the worst possible circumstances, ensuring that when his life depended on it, his body would perform. This brutal honesty in training, this refusal to deceive himself about his capabilities, is what forged him into an undefeatable warrior. The integration, when mind and body become one. The truly scary aspect of Musashi's mastery was how completely he integrated mental and physical strength. This integration went beyond mere coordination. It was a state where the distinction between thinking and doing disappeared, where his body executed his will instantaneously, without the delay of conscious decision-making. In combat, this manifested as an almost supernatural ability to read and respond to opponents. Musashi could perceive the intention behind an attack before it physically manifested. This wasn't psychic ability. It was the result of training his awareness to detect the subtle physical and energetic shifts that precede action. His body, so finely tuned and practiced, could respond to these microsignals faster than conscious thought could process them. He called this state mushin, or no-mind, not an absence of thought but a state where thought and action are simultaneous. Western psychology might call it flow state, but Musashi's achievement went deeper. He didn't just experience this state occasionally during peak performance. He cultivated it as his default mode of being. He trained himself to live in mushin, where every action flowed naturally from perfect awareness without the interference of ego, fear, or hesitation. The scariest demonstration of this integration was his famous duel with Sasaki Kojiro, considered the greatest swordsman of the age. Musashi arrived late to the duel, a deliberate psychological tactic to disturb his opponent's mental state. When he finally appeared, he wielded a wooden sword he had carved from an oar on the boat ride over. With a single, perfectly executed strike, he killed Kojiro. This wasn't luck or trickery. It was the culmination of decades of training where his mind could calculate angles, timing, and distance with perfect accuracy, and his body could execute with absolute precision. This duel exemplifies everything terrifying about Musashi's mastery. The psychological manipulation of arriving late. The improvisation of crafting a weapon from an oar. The confidence to face the deadliest swordsman in Japan with a wooden weapon. The perfect execution under maximum pressure. The instantaneous reading of the situation and flawless response. Every element of his training, mental, physical, strategic, intuitive, converged in that single moment. This is what complete integration looks like, decades of preparation enabling split-second perfection. The philosophy, principles from the Book of 5 Rings. Near the end of his life, Musashi retreated to a cave and wrote the Book of 5 Rings, distilling his life's learning into a philosophical and practical guide. The text is divided into 5 books, each representing an element: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. Together, they form a complete system of strategy applicable not just to swordsmanship but to all aspects of life. The Book of Earth establishes fundamentals, the importance of understanding principles rather than just techniques. Musashi emphasized that true mastery comes from understanding the why behind every action, not just the how. He advocated for cross-training, studying diverse subjects, and developing broad knowledge as the foundation for deep expertise. He wrote that one should study strategy over the years and achieve the spirit of the warrior. This wasn't about memorizing forms, but about internalizing principles so deeply that they become part of your being. The Book of Water speaks to adaptability. Like water, Musashi taught, one must be able to take any form, fit any container, flow around obstacles. Rigidity is weakness. The truly strong can be soft when needed and hard when required. This flexibility, both mental and physical, made him unpredictable and thus nearly unbeatable. Water doesn't fight obstacles, it flows around them or wears them down. Musashi embodied this principle, adapting his strategy to each opponent rather than relying on a fixed approach. The Book of Fire addresses combat itself, strategy, tactics, timing, and rhythm. Here Musashi's genius truly shines. He understood combat not as a series of techniques but as a dynamic interplay of forces, where victory comes from disrupting the opponent's rhythm while maintaining your own. He wrote about the importance of initiative, of attacking the enemy's strategy rather than just his body, of creating psychological advantage through unexpected actions. Combat, for Musashi, was as much mental as physical, and victory belonged to whoever controlled the tempo and psychology of the encounter. The Book of Wind critiques other schools and approaches, demonstrating Musashi's deep understanding of martial arts beyond his own style. By studying what others did wrong, he refined what was right. This critical analysis extended to self-examination, constantly questioning his own methods, never satisfied, always seeking improvement. He understood that stagnation was death, that even the greatest master must continue to learn and evolve. This intellectual humility, combined with supreme confidence in his abilities, created a paradox that defined his approach. Finally, the Book of Void speaks to the ineffable, the space beyond technique, the realm of pure intuition and spontaneous action. This is the ultimate goal of training, to transcend conscious effort and achieve a state where perfect action emerges naturally from perfect awareness. It's the scary part that most people never reach because it requires letting go of the ego's need for control and trusting completely in years of training to guide action. The void represents the space where all dualities collapse, where there is no separation between self and other, thought and action, technique and instinct. It is the final integration, the ultimate mastery. The cost of mastery, what Musashi sacrificed. Understanding Musashi's strength means acknowledging what he gave up to achieve it. His life was one of almost complete renunciation. He never married, never had children, never owned property or accumulated wealth. He lived simply, often sleeping outdoors, eating minimally, possessing only his swords and the clothes on his back. Where other samurai accumulated estates and served in comfortable positions, Musashi wandered as a masterless ronin. He sacrificed comfort, security, and conventional success. While other samurai served lords and lived in relative luxury, Musashi wandered Japan as a ronin, seeking worthy opponents and continuously testing himself. He deliberately chose hardship, believing that comfort bred weakness and that true strength emerged only through constant challenge. This wasn't asceticism for its own sake, but a calculated decision. Every comfort he rejected was replaced with training, every conventional pleasure with a deeper satisfaction of mastery. The social cost was significant. In a society that valued clan loyalty and service to a lord, Musashi existed outside normal structures. He was respected but also isolated, feared but also misunderstood. His single-minded dedication to the way made ordinary relationships difficult. How could he relate to people whose concerns were securing positions, arranging marriages, accumulating wealth, all things he had deliberately rejected? His path was solitary by necessity. This is perhaps the scariest aspect of his path. It demanded everything. There was no half measure, no weekend warrior approach to mastery. Musashi's strength came from his willingness to make his entire life a dojo, every moment an opportunity for practice and refinement. He transformed himself into a human weapon not through talent alone but through an almost inhuman level of dedication and sacrifice. Yet he didn't seem to view these as sacrifices. In his writings, there's no sense of martyrdom or complaint. He had found his path and walked it completely. The scary truth is that what most people would consider unacceptable loss, Musashi considered necessary refinement. He stripped away everything that didn't serve his purpose, and in doing so, achieved a purity of focus that made him invincible. He understood that you cannot serve two masters. If you want true mastery, it must become your entire life. Training methods: the forging of a warrior. Musashi's training methods were as unforgiving as his philosophy. He understood that mediocre training produces mediocre results, and that to achieve extraordinary capability required extraordinary effort. His approach combined physical conditioning, technical practice, strategic study, and psychological training in ways that challenged every aspect of his being. Physical training was constant and varied. Beyond the thousands of daily sword strikes, he engaged in strength training, endurance work, and flexibility exercises. He practiced moving in armor, fighting on different terrain, and adapting to various weapons. He understood that real combat never matches the ideal conditions of a training hall, so he deliberately practiced under adverse circumstances. Rain-slicked ground, darkness, uneven terrain, distractions, fatigue, he embraced them all as opportunities to refine his art. Technical practice went beyond repetition to what modern learning theory calls deliberate practice. Each movement was executed with full attention, constantly refined, never allowed to become mere habit. He would practice a single technique hundreds of times in a session, each time slightly adjusting, testing, perfecting. This wasn't mindless drill but conscious refinement, where every repetition built on the last, gradually approaching an ideal that could never quite be reached but always pursued. Strategic study occupied his intellectual hours. He studied military history, analyzing famous battles and duels. He learned from other martial artists, not just to copy them but to understand their principles and find their weaknesses. He studied arts beyond combat, tea ceremony, poetry, calligraphy, painting, understanding that the mind needed diverse challenges to develop fully. Each discipline informed the others, creating a web of understanding where insights from one domain transferred to another. Psychological training might have been his most advanced innovation. He deliberately cultivated comfort with discomfort, familiarity with fear, peace amidst chaos. He would place himself in dangerous or uncomfortable situations specifically to train his mind to remain calm. He practiced maintaining awareness during distractions, focus during interruptions, clarity during confusion. He understood that the mind, like the body, adapts to the challenges it faces, and that psychological strength required psychological stress to develop. Perhaps most importantly, he integrated all these elements. A training session might begin with meditation to settle the mind, move to technical practice to refine the body, shift to strategic study to sharpen the intellect, and end with physical conditioning to build endurance. Every element supported every other element, creating a comprehensive development system that addressed all aspects of warrior capability. This integrated approach is what separated his training from conventional methods and produced his extraordinary results. Lessons for the modern world. Few of us will ever face mortal combat with sharpened steel, so what relevance does Musashi's example have for modern life? The answer lies in understanding that his principles transcend the specific context of swordsmanship. They apply to any field where mastery is sought: business, art, athletics, intellectual pursuits, or personal development. The first lesson is about total commitment. Musashi didn't dabble in martial arts. He dedicated his entire being to it. In an age of scattered attention and endless options, his example reminds us that true mastery requires focused dedication. You cannot master everything, but you can master something if you're willing to make it your priority. The modern world offers infinite possibilities, which paradoxically makes mastery harder. The abundance of choices creates decision paralysis and scattered effort. Musashi teaches us the power of radical focus. The second lesson is about integration. Musashi didn't separate his training from his life. They were one and the same. Modern people often compartmentalize, treating work, health, relationships, and personal growth as separate domains. Musashi shows us the power of holistic development, where physical, mental, and spiritual cultivation support and enhance each other. The executive who exercises to reduce stress performs better at work. The artist who meditates achieves deeper creativity. The athlete who studies strategy gains competitive advantage. Integration multiplies effectiveness. The third lesson concerns mental discipline. In a world of constant distraction, the ability to maintain focus and calm under pressure is perhaps more valuable than ever. Musashi's practice of maintaining ordinary mind, even in life-or-death situations, translates directly to maintaining composure during high-stakes business negotiations, critical presentations, or personal crises. The specific challenges differ, but the principle remains. Mental control determines outcomes. Those who can think clearly when others panic, who can maintain focus amidst chaos, possess an almost unfair advantage. The fourth lesson is about continuous improvement. Musashi never stopped training, never stopped questioning, never stopped refining his art. Even after becoming the greatest swordsman in Japan, he continued to practice and learn. This growth mindset, this refusal to rest on past achievements, is essential for sustained excellence in any field. In rapidly changing domains, technology, business, science, the ability to continuously adapt and improve isn't just advantage, it's survival. Musashi understood this centuries ago. The fifth lesson is perhaps the most challenging: the willingness to sacrifice comfort for growth. Musashi deliberately sought difficulty, knowing that ease bred complacency. In modern life, where comfort is easily available and actively marketed, choosing the harder path requires conscious effort. Yet this is where growth happens, in the discomfort zone where we must adapt and become stronger. The entrepreneur who stays late perfecting the product. The athlete who trains through pain. The student who tackles difficult material rather than coasting. Growth requires voluntary discomfort. The sixth lesson involves honest self-assessment. Musashi trained under realistic conditions because he understood that self-deception is fatal. In modern contexts, this translates to seeking honest feedback, testing yourself against real challenges, and refusing to hide behind comfortable illusions. The business that honestly assesses its weaknesses can address them. The individual who acknowledges limitations can transcend them. Brutal honesty about current capability is the foundation for future improvement. The void, beyond technique. Ultimately, what made Musashi's strength scary was that it transcended the technical. Anyone can learn techniques. Dedicated students can achieve physical prowess and mental discipline. But very few reach the level Musashi describes in the Book of Void, where action emerges spontaneously from a place beyond conscious thought, where the practitioner and the practice become indistinguishable. This void state represents the pinnacle of mastery, where years of training compress into instantaneous, perfect action. It's scary because it requires absolute trust. Trust in your training, trust in your body, trust in your intuition. It means surrendering conscious control to something deeper, allowing muscle memory and trained instinct to guide action. For most people, this surrender feels like losing control, when in fact it represents the highest form of control. where consciousness and capability unite so completely that the distinction disappears. Modern neuroscience provides some insight into this phenomenon. When an action becomes deeply ingrained through practice, it shifts from conscious processing in the prefrontal cortex to automatic processing in the basal ganglia. Expert performers in any field, athletes, musicians, surgeons, describe similar states where they just know what to do without thinking about it. Musashi systematically cultivated this state across all aspects of his art, creating neural pathways so robust that perfect technique emerged automatically. But the void goes deeper than mere muscle memory. It represents a state of consciousness where the boundary between self and world becomes permeable. Musashi could perceive and respond to his environment with extraordinary sensitivity because he had trained himself to get out of his own way. His ego didn't interfere with his perception or action. This egoless state is what many meditative traditions seek, but Musashi achieved it through the crucible of mortal combat. When your life depends on perfect action, the luxury of ego evaporates. The void represents something that cannot be taught directly, only discovered through practice. No amount of instruction can give you this state. You must cultivate it through years of dedicated effort.